So we're already 40 people, so we start then, and then colleagues will join at some point. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're from. I think we've got colleagues from both sides of the world. Thank you very much for joining on this exciting second part of the Training Academy for Politicians with a focus on climate. We had a very, very exciting session yesterday, so this is part 2 of the same block. So if you could not follow yesterday's session, just let us know, because we also have the recordings. And today's session will also be recorded, so you know. All the material is already being uploaded in a link that we will be sharing with you, so you won't miss any of the material. So today, as I said, is the second part of this module. We will be giving the floor to our Secretary General Fabrizio Rossi from CEMR in a second, but just for practicalities reasons, I said this is going to be recorded. We are also going to have, I'm going to explain you how the day is going to run. We're going to have a presentation from Fabrizio with reflections from yesterday's session. We will then have a short Mentimeter or poll where we can see where we're from, our expertise on climate aspects, and then we will have the keynote speech from Kes McCormick, one of the brilliant scientists. And then we will have a breakout room session where people can just split in smaller groups to have some interactive games linked to climate. Then we will also have a short break, and then we will move on to the financial part, where we will have speakers from different organizations. And all this will also be animated with questions and answers from the politicians. I encourage you to use the chat. We're monitoring that, and we'll have 2 moments where we can answer questions. Okay, so make sure that you put the questions in the chat, and also if you can rename your names or maybe organizations in the in your profile, so we know where you're from. Okay, as mentioned yesterday, this is a training that is targeting politicians from Europe and Central Asia, but that doesn't mean that it's only for them. Yesterday, we could see that there are a lot of participants that came from different expertise, which is very good, because then there's a really good complementarity between the experts and the politicians, and I think that they have to work together. But please feel free from a political point of view to intervene when you wish to do so. So without further notice, then I will give the floor to our Secretary General from CEMR, Fabrizio Rossi. Please, you have the floor, Fabrizio.
Very much, Eva, and hello, good morning, everyone. It's really exciting to see so many messages coming in from so many different geographies. Please do not hesitate indeed to send an hello message on the chat specifying the city and the country you are currently in. This is very, very, very interesting to us. Thank you very much. So welcome indeed to this second day of the Political Training Academy on climate, targeting European and Central Asian politicians. This training, as you may know, is co-organized by 3 organizations. And if you enjoyed the training yesterday, the changes we had, is because indeed of the good work of my colleague Eva Baños from CEMR PLATFORMA, the good work of Sarah Offling and Juan Carlos Uribe from UCLG Learning, and Elena Monteiro and Nusha Wu from United Nations Disaster Risk Making Cities Resilience 2030 initiative. And let's not forget the facilitators for the interactive game yesterday, Carolina, Fernando, and Valeria from UCLG Learning. Thank you very much to all of you. This is indeed a teamwork exercise, and personally, I'm extremely happy that participants could benefit from each other's expertise in a very open session. The goal of this academy is indeed to exchange information among you, politicians, so that you can get inspired for the development of your own climate strategies, plans, and actions, bearing in mind indeed the various EU and international contexts and initiatives. I think simplification here is key, given these initiatives are so many and so diverse. So it is our objective indeed to provide you with this with a compass to navigate this dense landscape of actions and initiatives. This is our aim, and for this we set in motion this training academy, which is inspired by the EU Urban Agenda, where CEMR led the action called Training Academy for Politicians. UCLG Learning is also committed to the localization of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, and they are also planning. They are also playing a key role with their UCLG resilience module. And yesterday we also learned about the Making Cities Resilience 2030 initiatives, which provides the access to tools, very important tools, technical specialists and advisors. And it also links cities with a peer-to-peer learning environment and communities of practice. So I indeed encourage you to join these platforms to get the access to all the resources you need. We will be sharing the links to the three co-organizers so that you can indeed join these initiatives and these tools. Still on the yesterday session, it is clear that these online learning sessions are crucial nowadays. You all stated indeed this with your comments yesterday. Our desire is from all of you coming from different parts of the world, and showing indeed that we are all here together is because we have one common goal, and we really wish to join forces to tackle climate change and address the climate crisis. Yesterday, we had 120 participants from all over the world, from different continents. As far as I see, we were really able to cover the entire world yesterday with the participants. And interesting enough, I see indeed an important degree of diversity in the audience, with participants coming from local governments, but also from academia, civil society, and private sector. Yesterday, we had an exciting presentation. I found the presentation very interesting. This was given by Dr. Jaroslav Misiak on adaptation aspects, what the Ipcc report is showing to us, and how adaptation is dealt within the UN Climate Convention, the SDG 2030 agenda, and the European context. We also had an interesting contribution by Mr. Roman Dantek, who gave us a vision of the UN negotiation on climate and set the political context at the European level with the barriers and challenges ahead of us. And indeed, Roman Dantek yesterday emphasized the need to change the narrative and the need to act now without delays. We also heard of two lessons from the resilience hubs from Making Cities Resilience 2030 initiative. These were coming from the city of Malmo and Potenza. The technical assistance program supporting cities and regional climate adaptation is indeed a tool to help the Covenant of Mayor Cities to tackle climate adaptation. And this was launched this year within the reviewed EU strategy on adaptation. Also yesterday, we counted on an interactive session covering nature-based solutions, providing concrete case studies to all of us. And today, dear friends, we also have a very, very exciting agenda. Dr. Kes McCormick will bring the science perspective, focusing on mitigation, what this means to the subnational level, and what tools we can all count on. We will also discuss on a core aspect, financing, very important, crucial for the transition. How can cities and territories apply for European and international financing? How to prepare good proposal? What are the barriers and tools at your disposal? These are the questions that we will be addressing today. And there is no doubt that financing is key to tackle climate change, but we also have to, of course, to consider the human and legal framework. The EU tools available here indeed are there, but it needs really to be easily accessible to all of us, local governments and local politicians. This is a very important point. In Europe today, nearly 73% of the population do live in urban areas. Climate change affects almost all components of city life. It's not just environment, it's economy, it's society, it's education, it's culture, it's everything. So this indeed drives the new and complex challenging for urban planning and management. So the impacts that we are facing when it comes to heat waves, for instance, can produce a very strong impacts in urban assessments and a cascade of related impacts: droughts, water shortage, increased pollution, degradation of ecosystem, thermal discomfort, and even, as we know, premature death due to the heat. Hence, all quality of life in the city indeed can be affected from the climate change impacts. And let me say that to me, this is a very important point. This is indeed also accelerating the phenomenon of urban shrinkage, with the population in some important cities in Europe and across the world decreasing today, accelerating indeed the mobility towards peri-urban areas that today are not yet prepared for this change in demography. So these are enough reasons to also justify that the EU recovery package needs to involve a dialogue with the local level, which is not happening fully. Let's be clear on this. We need to find real support from our governments to benefit from these funds that are available, but needs indeed, as I said, to be easily accessible by local governments. So this is indeed a call to action to all of you to interact and strengthen the links with your national governments to adopt inclusive policies when it comes to climate change. Still, yesterday, on the yesterday session, we also learned about, again, the Making City Resilience 2030 initiative, which is hosted by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. This is an initiative that is a global partnership of key partners with expertise and networks across urban resilience, indeed, and climate change that help cities develop and implement their resilience strategies. So this program, these initiatives, provides the access to tools, technical specialists, advisors, and also links cities with a peer-to-peer learning environment on communities of practices. So I think that I can probably stop here because the very exciting part of the session is yet to come. So I wish you a very fruitful training this morning. Let's make the most out of this training session. Let's feel inspired, let's change, because we all need to come to the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh and being able really to share concrete example of how subnational level can play a crucial role in fighting climate change and fostering mitigation and adaptation strategy at the local level. Many thanks to all of you.
Okay, many thanks, Fabrizio, for your warm welcoming words. We'll make sure that we do our best also to come to Egypt with really not just clear messages, but with clear action. I think that we keep saying every year since COP exists that we need to to make a difference, but we really need to make a difference. We also heard yesterday that when Jaroslav presented the Ipcc report that we are late. So it's time for us to really do something, and seriously. So, and I'm sure that we can all do that as well. Also because all the organizations here are participated in the LGMA constituency of UN. So this is also another instrument to lobby ahead of COP27. So we are also joining forces in that sense from the local and regional perspective. So I think that we're good on track, and we'll make sure that we do our best, and we have to do it, no choice. And now, before we move to the quick poll to see who's around the screen and expertise, we would like to take a group picture. I put it in the chat that we will be doing this. So if you could all turn your cameras on for a few seconds. I know that we all look very pretty this morning. Okay, so maybe turn it on for, yeah. So let's see, I'm leaving also to my colleagues to see if this is good enough. Okay. So who's taking the picture? Is it you, Nusha? Okay, like a screenshot. Okay, so we count up to 3 and we all smile. Okay, so I say 1, 2, 3, and then the shot. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more try just in case you missed it. So once more, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I think it was good. Good. And we will also put this in the little report that we are going to circulate after the meeting, as I said in the chat. And also for those needing a certificate, please contact me. I put my email in the chat. Okay, so now we're moving to the Mentimeter, and I leave it to Juan Carlos to put the questions on the screen. You can either use your GSM number, your GSM or your screen. You have the Mentimeter code here on the screen. So you just enter menti.com and put the code. And we have 5 questions, so this should go quick. And the code is 485483. I said again, 485483. So, okay, so if we can see the question, so this is the same as yesterday to see who's around the screen. And I leave 30 seconds to respond, more or less. Okay, I will write the code here. For those who cannot see it, is 485483. I've put it in the chat. So we see that we still have a majority from Europe and Central Asia, also from Asia Pacific, Caribbean. No one from Sub-Saharan Africa this morning? Okay. I leave maybe 10 more seconds. Okay. Okay, so maybe we can go to the second, that give us an indication of who is here. Okay, thank you very much. So the second question is, what is your area of work? So we see that is, policy making, environment, those seem to be equal, yeah. Maybe 20 more seconds. Okay. So it seems majority between policy making and environment. Very good. Policy making wins. Okay. Fine. Then if we can go to the next question, please. What are key actions your city is taking towards climate mitigation? Okay, so we see it's quite diverse. We see action plans, awareness, nature-based solutions, urban planning, training, climate neutrality plans, retrofitting. Some said not much indeed.
Driving mode.
Okay, we give 24 seconds. So it's quite diverse. So I see that urban planning as well. So it's good to see that you have a large variety of actions. Perfect. 10 more seconds. Okay. Also plans to reduce ocean pollution, infrastructure facilities, climate risk assessment. Very good. Okay, so all this information will also be shared in our little report, so you have it as well. Okay, and then can we maybe move to the next question, Juanca? So how is your city financing climate action? And here you have 8 options from regular city budget, taxes, bonds, public-private partnerships, international financing, European financing, national governments investments, or fiscal mechanisms. Okay, so we see that it's quite divided between regular city and national government transfer and investments. Yeah, so we see that is top level and bottom level. Also, okay, so we see it's really divided between city and national government. Okay. Okay, so that gives us a rough idea. And regional, some colleagues are saying regional funding. Yes, okay. So can we then close the Mentimeter now? So you have an idea what is our expertise on what are we putting the money in and where do we get it from? Okay, so that's brilliant. So now, without any more delays, I'm going to give the floor to Kes McCormick, and then he's an associate professor at the International Institute for Industrial Environment Economics. He's based in Sweden, and he will give us a nice talk, more focused on mitigation aspects. Yesterday we had the other keynote who gave us more indications on adaptation, so we can see the differences between the two of them. So Kes, you have the floor. He will be speaking for maybe 15-20 minutes, and then we will open a short moment for questions and answers from the audience. Thank you very much. Kes, you have the floor.
Fantastic. I will just open up these slides and see if we can get it to be looking a bit nicer. Hang on, we'll go off hide presenter view. Okay, look, it's wonderful to be here and to be invited to be part of such a fantastic initiative. I think I can start by saying that I have a background in environmental science and political science. And the reason why I have that kind of background is because I was very interested in the science of climate change, which I'm going to talk about today, but I was also very interested in the politics of climate change. And I would say that this academy is absolutely working in that space, bringing politicians and scientists together and bringing politics and science together, which is so fundamentally important if we want to see change, as we've heard talked about already today and yesterday. As you can hear from my accent, I am originally from Melbourne, Australia, the other part of the world, but I have been working in Europe for some 20 years. So I consider myself European, and I work on a lot of international projects, which I'll talk a little bit about today. Look, just to say again, I mean, I think if we're interested in transformations, in economic systems, in infrastructure, in social systems, everything we need to see in relation to mitigation and adaptation in relation to climate change, then we have to embrace learning. And we have to embrace the idea that we need to retrain ourselves and relearn and learn new things and so on. So just a huge congratulations to the organisers of this academy and to all the people that are attending, because this is fundamental to change. If you can't learn, you won't change. Today, I am going to focus in on mitigation, but it is important to say that the link between mitigation and adaptation is significant, and it's becoming stronger and stronger connected together as we actually experience a changing climate. Some of you may remember teaching and learning with someone like this at the front of a classroom with a coat on and a blackboard. You might still experience this, but the truth is that learning and training and academies like these have developed dramatically, and we can learn in so many incredible ways. And I think it's just really important to keep this in mind as I talk today and as you take part in this academy. I just want to say a few words about learning as well. I mean, today I'm going to talk about information, new information, and information is really important to learning, but learning goes far beyond just information. Inspiration, as was talked about earlier, is so important. And inspiration comes from examples and tools and talking to each other and asking questions and so on. But we can even go further and talk about insights and ideas. And this is why an academy like this is so important, because insights is something deeper than information. It means we start to understand the systems around us and the types of ways we can influence change and so on. Ideas can be very, very powerful. A new idea can change your whole way of thinking about the world. So this is why learning is so fundamental here in this space. When we talk about mitigation and adaptation, if you take one thing from today, the key lesson around learning is systems thinking. We must think in systems. And I could talk for a long time about systems thinking, but I'll just say very simply, systems thinking is about having conceptual thinking, which means having a big picture and being understand the big picture, in this case, the planet and a changing climate, and how that connects together with all kind of other aspects of life. Strategic thinking or strategic practices or strategic decisions means making informed decisions. Evidence-based decisions based on science, based on the best understanding we have about the world. And then, of course, practical thinking and practical actions like financing and so on, how we actually get things going. So let me jump directly into the science. The science can be very complicated and you can talk for a long time about science, or it can be very, very simple, because the truth of the matter is that the science is unequivocal. And this is graphs I'm going to show you. You've seen a few of these already yesterday from the Ipcc, which is, the highest level of science that we have on this planet. I mean, these are the best scientists in the world, and this is what they're saying. In short, our greenhouse gas emissions continue to increase, and we are running out of time to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. 1.5 degrees is the point where we believe that we will remain within a safe climate, and after 1.5 degrees, we start to move into a dangerous climate. This is a little bit of a guess because we don't entirely know what's going to happen, but we do know that after 1.5 and above, bad things start to happen. So the science is really, really clear here that we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions across a whole range of sectors and activities. The good news is that there are scenarios that exist to do this. And of course, the Ipcc has mapped out various scenarios for climate mitigation, how we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions across different industries and sectors and so on. The key message here is that these scenarios are technically possible, which means all the technologies and innovations exist. They're economically possible, financially possible. All the money exists. We have enough money to pay for these kinds of changes. And socially and politically, these are absolutely possible. So these scenarios look rather extraordinary. You can see these graphs bending downwards. Instead of the emissions going upwards, they go down. But what's important to grasp from this is all very possible. This is all within our grasp. It's all within our decision-making structures as they exist today. And we are seeing a great deal of action around the world, just not quite at the levels or at the speed that we need to see. But we are absolutely shifting many, many systems around the world towards trying to meet 1.5 degrees or hopefully not much above that. But climate change is more than science. And I could talk about the science for quite a while, but I do think it's important to fully recognize and to continually share this message that climate change or changing climate is all around us. This is a photo from Australia of the bushfires. You can see a kangaroo hopping along. This is not a happy photo, but this is absolutely climate change in reality. This is what climate change means. In places like Australia, it will mean more and more fires, more intense fires, essentially unstoppable fires. There is no way to adapt to these kinds of fires. Adaptation is possible to a certain level, and after that, you just have to run and hide. We're going to see floods in other parts of the world, droughts in other parts of the world. It really is devastating. And when you start to understand this level of science and the impacts that we're going to see, it is very, very difficult to grapple with some of this information. It feels like a Hollywood film. It feels like something which is unbelievable, but is absolutely happening. But the key message here is that we are in control of this situation. We can shift the dial. We can go in different directions. And we are seeing this happening around the world. It's also really important when we talk about climate change and cities and climate mitigation, that we connect this into the broader area of cities, which has already been talked about here today, particularly around the Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals have mapped out a number of goals, and one of them is goal number 11, which is on sustainable cities and communities. And climate mitigation fits very strongly into these changes. And we can see three big challenges that they're highlighting. One is kind of the rapid and often unplanned urbanization that's taking place all around the world, from Europe to Africa to Asia. But we can see that the solutions there are really within our control. I mean, our planning systems and so on, we do plan our cities, we do design our cities, and we can absolutely shape them towards low carbon transport, green spaces, sustainable lifestyles, and so on. This is absolutely within our grasp and happening. We can also see that cities have a major challenge in terms of the amount of energy and consumption taking place in them. Once again, we see enormous investments happening into renewable energy all over the world. It's just a matter to continue to scale those investments. And for cities and so on, it's so important to be integrating renewables into cities and to city infrastructure. And then finally, we know that cities are very vulnerable to disasters of all types, as I just showed before, with fires and floods and droughts and so on. So it is a key for us to protect our cities. I was recently in Rome, wandering the streets of Rome, an incredible historical city. I mean, the value of a city like Rome to our history and our culture is just we can't put a money figure on it. I mean, we must protect these cities and these places. We must ensure that they survive a changing climate. So the driving force here to adapt and to mitigate is so fundamental to our civilization. I'm just going to talk about three key opportunities or support mechanisms for cities around climate mitigation, because these are big issues and big topics. And as I speak, I can feel the weight of some of the things I'm saying, but there is so much support and help out there, and more is appearing all the time. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Ipcc summary for urban policymakers and what that means, the 100 climate neutral cities mission in Europe, which is far bigger than just 100 cities. And finally, mission innovation and the urban mission, which is a global initiative now taking off around the world. So if we just turn to the Ipcc, so the Ipcc and much of the science on climate change and climate change mitigation is focused obviously on the global level and on nation states. But there's now a big effort to try to translate and to make sense of all this information for cities. And they're holding a variety of events for cities. They're going to create various documents and briefs for cities to help city governments and urban actors make sense of the science and be able to work with the science and make use of it. But their big message, and it's the same message I've just been saying now, is that cities are absolute hotspots of global emissions. So it's where the emissions are coming from, but also risks. There are enormous risks for cities. But of course, cities are also where innovation occurs. They're enormous hubs for innovation, action, and resilience. So incredible hope there for cities to be much bigger players going forward into the future on climate action. But a key message here from this report is also that the opportunity for kind of effective, efficient, and rapid action in cities really depends on also accessible and actionable science at the city scale. Very much what this academy is about, and what other kind of initiatives are about, are trying to connect research and innovation to cities and to help cities along this incredible transformation path. So this summary for urban policymakers, I think, is a really valuable resource. And the slide before, you can basically click on these links and it will take you to these websites and these different events that they're holding. They essentially map out what I've already talked about. They map out about the cities are the place where we can take significant action and the importance of cities to a low carbon development path. This report also, to repeat again, is unequivocal about the science of climate change. I mean, there is no doubt here, and I keep repeating it because I think this is a very important message that we always take home, that we we absolutely need immediate and deep emissions, across all sectors to stay beyond 1.5 degrees. But the summary for policymakers, for urban policymakers, is also very clear that there are a whole range of regions and cities around the world that are adopting zero emission targets and plans and actions, and that are well and truly on the path to carbon neutrality or zero carbon. So a lot of action is taking place, and we can draw a lot of inspiration from the cities and the regions which are taking a lead in these particular areas. If I jump to the mission for 100 climate neutral cities in Europe, I think this is really important for all Europeans to understand what's happening, and for people around the world to kind of appreciate and to also learn from this initiative. I mean, the EU missions are an attempt to bring concrete solutions to some of our greatest challenges that we're facing. These are based on the idea of the mission to the moon. If you just think about that mission for a moment, the fact that we actually got to the moon and back, that's a pretty extraordinary achievement. So there's not much that we can't do as humanity. And you would think these missions we can absolutely also achieve. So we've mapped out ambitious goals across 5 different missions. Adaptation to climate change is a major goal. Cure for cancer is another one. Soil health and food, climate neutral cities, which I'm going to talk about here, and then healthy oceans and seas. Once again, these missions are separated, but they are actually all interconnected in complex ways. But the cities mission in particular is the one where you feel a lot of action and impact can take place very quickly. And the idea is to really develop and support 100, or actually it's about 112 cities along this ambitious path by 2030 to try to be climate neutral, and to take all the learning and so on from these cities and to share it with other cities. So what we can see here is a map of Europe with the cities that have actually received or been selected for this mission. But again, it goes far beyond these cities. The idea is that these cities are forerunners, but that they're working with many other cities, both within their countries and across Europe. It's also important to emphasize here that we're not just talking about big cities. We're not just talking about London and Paris. We're talking about many, many small cities. And in fact, in Europe, the vast majority of people live in small cities. So it's actually within the small cities where we need to see perhaps the most action. We also see here across these cities the connections between urban and rural. It's very important not to remember these connections between the urban and rural and the periphery. It's actually a space which has a big influence on climate mitigation and adaptation. And of course, these cities are being challenged to move beyond a sectoral approach to cutting greenhouse gas emissions and to think very much about consumption. And what that really means is that we tend to have a big focus on energy and transport systems in cities. And this is absolutely fundamental to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but we must also bring in our consumption. And here, when we talk about consumption, we can talk about food, our diets, what we're eating. I mean, what we're eating in cities is changing the entire world because of the agricultural systems we have set up to supply that food. We can talk about fashion and clothes. We can talk about all of our electronics. We can talk about how we're building our cities, that type of consumption. But the consumption angle is a key part of this work on climate neutral cities. 2 particular aspects that these cities will work with will be city climate contracts, which are contracts, political agreements, strategies, which are basically planned out exactly how cities will achieve this goal. The same way they plan to go to the moon. You either get to the moon or you don't. You can't get halfway there. And that's the same with these missions. You've got to get there and back, or you've got to get all the way to climate neutrality. They're also going to put a huge effort into climate investment plans, which is about financing. And the challenge with financing is often about bringing together diverse collaborations, bringing together different organizations and groups that will actually make the investments needed to bring about deep cuts in greenhouse gas emissions in cities. And all of this information is available on their websites, and more material will come to support cities in Europe and around the world. I'll just finish quickly on mission innovation and the urban mission. Mission innovation is a global initiative which is focused on accelerating the clean energy revolution, making a massive push on energy around the world. It's mapped out an urban mission in particular. That urban mission picks up on all the topics that I've been talking about here, It picks up on the kind of challenges facing cities. It picks up on the idea of creating 50 pioneer kind of large-scale integrated demonstration projects and expanding that to 250 to 500. And it picks up on the idea that urban systems are all interconnected and that we can make great strides forward in this space. It's going to put a focus on urban transition roadmaps, which is, again, this idea of how we map our way towards our goals. A global knowledge center, which is all about what we're talking about here today, learning, sharing knowledge, sharing inspiration, making sure that good examples around the world are being shared across the world. And as well as an annual innovation summit, which will obviously bring people together to interact and so on. Just quickly, they also talk about kind of enablers, which they talk about kind of governance, technology, society, finance, data. There are a lot of enablers for change. And they talk about the idea of sprints. The idea of a sprint is to take a particular topic or area in your city and to push really hard on that area, to kind of run forwards quickly. This could be in buildings, energy, mobility, you name it. There's a lot of other material here. I could talk for a long time on this, but I will, just to give you a taste of what's happening around the world with these initiatives. There is incredible support appearing and growing for cities around the world to work with climate mitigation. Two final slides. I think one very practical way for cities to work with climate mitigation is to not work with the whole city, but to work with something called system demonstrators, or to work with the idea that you take a part of your city, take a street or a building or a district, and really do something ambitious in that space. Work kind of with a transformational design process. This can be taking a street and closing it to cars for a period of time, and experiencing that space without cars, or it could be taking a building or a district and saying this is going to be 100% renewable energy. There's great examples of this coming out of Sweden. This is a big way the Swedes work with innovation. And just so you know, the Swedes are on the top of every innovation index in the world, so they must know something about innovation. They work with designing the future today. That's what they do. They create the future in their cities right now. So even though they can't do it across the whole city, they can do it in a part of the city. And I'll just finish by saying that I do a lot of work with education and learning, and we've developed something called the City Futures Academy, which is similar to this kind of idea, which is based on online courses, completely free. We offer them all over the world. Amazingly, 100,000 people have been doing these courses on sustainable cities, on urban nature, on the sharing economy, and so on. And the whole idea here is to boost knowledge, skills, understanding, and how to kind of navigate urban transformations. We are one of many resources. And again, I think this academy, which has been set up, and this opportunity, which has been created here, is just another one of these fantastic initiatives which is taking place. And again, I highly encourage you to enjoy this and to embrace this learning, but to also share it with others in your organization so that you share the learning and spread it around your different colleagues and different partners. So I will end there. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Kes, for this also very exciting talk, and it also gives us another perspective and also put us into reality and context. And I personally love the picture that you showed from Australia. We've all seen that on TV, but you've seen that, like in real life, and that's very sad to see that. And we also have to play, a key role to really combat that. And so it's not because we see pictures on TV or far away in another continent, we have to think that this is not our continent. It is ours. And we are seeing that as well. For instance, in Spain, we are getting 45 degrees and we are not even midsummer. So this is really a serious situation. So thank you very much for all this insight and personal input. And now I'm seeing in the chat that we have very interesting comments. So I'm going to try to group some of the questions and comments to you, Kes, and then you can give me maybe a joint response. So we are seeing one of the key questions is that we know that at European level we have very tough targets because we have a very high ambition to become carbon neutral societies by 2050. For this, we need to make a huge effort from all sides. And one of the participants is saying that this is very worrying to have such ambition at European level, because it means that in order to have carbon neutral cities or carbon neutral societies in Europe, but this target year 2050, it means that a lot of the production of materials will be done outside Europe. So it's good to have a target here, but how do you see this production outside Europe to comply with that? Because then it means that you transfer the problem somewhere else outside our borders. So that's a fundamental aspect, I think, because Europe is true that it's leading in climate negotiations and also within the UNFCCC negotiations. We see that, but can you maybe give your insight on this? And then I'll come back to other points. Thank you.
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and it's a question which embraces systems thinking and thinking beyond our borders. No, absolutely. I think one of the great challenges for different countries and for like Europe is when you set these very tough targets on mitigation in particular to reduce your emissions dramatically, one potential consequence is that you push production outside your borders as a way to reduce emissions. What I can say here is I think that EU policymakers are absolutely aware of this. I mean, absolutely, academics are aware of this. This is being written about. But it's very important that when we introduce policies, where we are trying to introduce transformative policies, that we recognize that we must be having a continual evaluation of the policies to see what kinds of impacts they have, because it can be very, very difficult for policymakers to understand all the potential impacts that a policy causes, but this impact of pushing production outside of Europe and that we would just simply import products or services or others from outside of Europe, and whether greenhouse gas emissions would simply be shifted, this is obviously makes no sense whatsoever. And I do think we are keenly aware of this in Europe, and I think that there is a balance here between having these ambitious targets and making sure that we don't have such a scenario. But I would also say that industry tends to talk about this sometimes as a way to prevent transformative policy. And I do think that in many, many parts of the world, from China to Europe to Australia, we are seeing a shift in policies and industrial shifts. Take steel, for example. Steel is an area where I think we're going to see a massive transformation to green steel very, very quickly. So I think that we must continue. We can't stop with ambitious policies because we think that we're going to push production outside of Europe. We have to continue with this, but we have to be sensitive to what might occur.
Thank you very much, Lukas. That was very useful. We also have one comment on uncertainties in relation with emerging risk due to climate change, and this represents a challenge. And this colleague is also saying that permafrost and oceans are big sources of greenhouse gas emissions. And we cannot foresee really when and how these are going to be delivered in the atmosphere. And all this is going to have huge impacts on health, the economy, the planet, etc. So I don't want to comment on that.
I mean, I think the comment here about risks and emerging risks, and I mean, the science of climate change, and in particular where emissions are, has obviously developed significantly over 5 decades, and our knowledge about the potential risks has grown dramatically. Having said that, we are uncertain about what happens when you release enormous emissions in different parts of the world and in different ways and different timescales. But what we do know is it's not good news. And it is very, very frightening, the potential for huge emissions to be released from things like peat and other areas and so on, and what that might mean for the oceans and so on. So I think the message, again, is the same message, that we must, to mitigate this risk, we must just act as quickly as possible, and that the costs associated with the acting now are, so much smaller than acting later. So I think that this is really the key message here. But absolutely, the effects on the planet and on our civilization cannot be underestimated.
Thank you very much, guys. We also have another question. It says that the UK has several overseas islands, also on the Caribbean side. And how do you collect and combine those information into your national program? So I repeat it, is that UK has several overseas islands, also in the Caribbean. How do you collect and combine this information into the national program?
I mean, first and foremost, islands and island states, and when here we're not talking about Australia as an island, because that actually is an island as well, but small islands are the part of the world and the countries which are the most at risk, and that will in some places disappear because of rising sea levels. So this is, of course, for them, mitigation is really the only option. Adaptation to build walls around islands doesn't really exist. I think how they're combined into kind of national programs, yeah, it is actually quite an interesting question. I think in some countries that have close connections to their islands, like in Australia, there are islands off the coast, there is quite a strong connection to the national programs, and also other island states around places like Australia. For the UK, I think their islands are a long way away from the UK, those kind of places. So I'm not really sure the connections they have to their own national programs. But for sure, I mean, island countries and island states are some of the most vocal voices about a changing climate, and that they can absolutely see sea level rise occurring all around them and basically losing land all the time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We also have a comment question from Fabrizio Rossi. If you want to ask that directly, Fabrizio, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Eva. Yes, thank you very much. I would like to elaborate. I would like you to elaborate a little bit further, if possible, on mainly the comment I drop in the chat. We hear people saying very often that what is missing, the missing ingredient is policy, is politics actually, better said. And to me, this is indeed an oversimplification, given we all know that indeed we need leadership by our politicians, but at the very end, they're also relying on consensus and support by the territories and communities. And so I think it would be really interesting to hear from you, because you have this very special background, you know, really like at the intersection between science and political science.
No, it's a great question and a good follow-up, Fabricio. I mean, I wish I had the answer to this, but it is absolutely delving into it. I mean, we face this incredible challenge that our nation states, our countries, which are predominantly democracies and run on democracies or have governments, that those systems were never set up to deal with these types of problems. And in fact, those systems are designed to distribute power, so to make democracy work. And now we have a situation in which we have to respond to this incredible global challenge, which requires, you know, these incredible decisions. I kind of sit in two camps. On the one hand, I absolutely think our democracies and our governments can step up and can respond, but only if they have immense pressure on them from their citizens and from multinational companies and other businesses around them, which I think we absolutely see happening in many parts of the world. But again, once again, I mean, these types of government systems are often need to come to consensus or need to work together. So the speed of what they're doing can be slow. But again, as we see, like with the COVID crisis, you know, when we respond to a crisis like that, we are absolutely able to respond quickly. And I suppose the missions approach as well, the idea of a mission to the moon, it also mobilized government and mobilized all political parties. So I think the missions around climate neutrality is the same idea, to mobilize lots and lots of groups across society so that you don't have this pushback and so on. I'm still very, very hopeful that our political systems and our government systems can live up to the challenge. But I think that comes from a huge effort on activists and people in the streets and so on. I once sat in a lecture with a climate scientist, and I actually asked the same question to them. I said, like, you know, essentially what you just asked. And his answer, and this was to all his students who was teaching climate science, he said, the number one thing we can all do is protest. And he made that a bit, he was an American, he made it a bit dramatic, but what he meant was that we can't just sit and let things pass us by, that we absolutely need to take our knowledge and our understanding and demand change. I mean, we can do that in all kinds of different ways. I mean, you can protest in different ways, but absolutely that we're all part of this kind of change, and to do whatever we can to facilitate that change. I wish there was another answer here. I wish there was something, you know, 3 steps to how we would solve this problem. But I do think in my work and in my interactions, you do feel that there is definitely more and more organizations and more governments around the world, and more scientists and more interactions between these groups that are creating foundations for change. It's just that we need that change to happen a bit faster and a bit bigger.
Okay, thanks for the exciting response. We can take 2 more questions because I'm concerned about the timing, but this is really exciting to have your views on this. So one question is, do you think that the local government has technical and financial capabilities to planning for resilience and risk management, and how to achieve coordination between sector and special planning? so I repeat it, is do you think that the local government has technical and financial capabilities to planning for resilience and risk management, and how to achieve coordination between sector and spatial planning? This is one question, and then I will raise another one. So you can give us.
Yeah, look, it's another very good question. This is going to one of the key challenges for cities and local governments. I talked briefly about the different size of cities and different cities being engaged in this climate action, and something we absolutely have to recognise. There's certainly a difference between the city of London and, let's say, the city of Lund, where I am. The city of Lund is about 100,000 people. The city of London was millions and millions. The resources that the city of London has, and the planning departments and the skills and the knowledge, obviously, is really set up to respond to something like climate change. They can absolutely manage risk. They can absolutely integrate resilience into all parts of the city, and it's exactly what they're doing. So big cities have a clear advantage. They also can access finances much easier than smaller cities. And in a sense, this is why I kind of raised that point about smaller cities being supported more. Having said that, I think there's some particular areas where smaller cities can absolutely work with planning, resilience and risk management and so on. And one of them is actually nature-based solutions, which I think you talked about yesterday. Nature-based solutions and bringing nature into cities is a way for all cities to both adapt and mitigate at the same time. And to work with resilience in their cities in ways that are quite manageable for all cities, don't cost huge sums of money, and allow cities to actually engage in a pretty transformative process. So that particular space, I think, can work. But the point being made here, absolutely, local governments and smaller cities around the world need more support. And I suppose these initiatives that I talked about are trying to do that. And also other organisations like the Global Covenant of Mayors and C40 and ICLEI, these are also organisations that provide support to cities of all different sizes.
Okay, perfect. And then the last question, and if you could give a very short comment on this. And it's from a politician, a city councillor from the city government of Ormoc in the Philippines. So welcome, Marcos. And then he is the chairperson of the city council, and he's sponsoring an ordinance encouraging people to go solar and easing the requirements to be able to sell excess power to the electric distributor. But a law interested to go solar and subsidies to those willing to adapt could be helpful. But they also need technical assistance to know which solar tech is good and what they can use also, because there are a lot of typhoons in the Philippines. And he's asking what kind of agency or NGO would be interested in them, because it's a small city. Because we often hear, and also in Europe, that big cities are usually the ones with more resources, with more capacity, with more financial means, and sometimes the small and medium-sized cities, they don't have the same level of resources, so it's not balanced. So in your opinion, how can we maybe help a small city like this one in the Philippines? Thank you.
Yeah, look, another one around small cities and so on in different parts of the world. I mean, I do think these organisations like ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, work heavily with cities of all different sizes, and also try to facilitate, so they don't have the expertise in solar, but they facilitate collaborations through cities to the organisations and businesses that do work with something like solar. I think the Global Covenant of Mayors, this is also a supportive structure, maybe not as much as ICLEI and so on, but this mission innovation and so on happening globally now as well. I mean, their idea is to try to work with cities of all sizes as well. So, but I think ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, is a great one to go through. WWF Cities is also another organisation that facilitate collaborations, but often here it's like a connector role. It's about taking a municipality in a city, working with an international association and connecting them to the other organisations and so on around, like a technical question like this on solar technology and so on. One other organisation I can mention is the Rocky Mountain Institute, which is also now expanding globally and working particularly with the Global South around energy transitions. I can perhaps provide this information in a written form, and we can share that with everyone.
Okay, perfect. So you send me the names of these organizations, and then we'll put it in the minutes. And one last comment, is not a question, is that a problem with politicians is that sometimes they want to increase growth, to increase housing and development, and this is not comparable to reducing emissions. So no.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. So many thanks for your presentation, Kes, and thanks for all the interesting questions and comments. I'm afraid that we don't have more time, and we are even running a bit late.
No, but sorry.
No, it's all right, no problem. And now I'm going to give the floor to Juan Carlos from UCLG Learning. So he's going to tell us what's going to happen next. We're going to play. It's a fun part now. but it's an interactive session for all of us. So Juanca, you have the floor. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Eva. And thank you very much, guys, for that super interesting presentation and insightful discussion. And I'm looking forward to kind of continuing this at the end of the session. But yes, like we always want to go beyond just receiving information and making you reflect on that and using that and seeing how that applies to local governments. So we are bringing now an exercise in which you will be taking the role of local government officers, mayors, departments of heads, and making decisions based on available information, the needs of your citizens, and go through different stages for the next 30 minutes. So the first thing that I want to do, because we do need your active participation, is to ask you to turn on your camera for the next 30 minutes until the end of the exercise. That also will help all of the facilitators know who is actually active there and who they can count on for this role-playing game. So please turn on your camera so that we know that you can count. And if you don't have camera or good connection, just write in the chat, I'm here and I'm willing to participate, and you can engage without your camera and just with your microphone. And now let me just share the screen to explain a little bit more what we will be doing. So this is again another game that we've developed from the resilience learning modules called Futurities. And it's, wait a second. And we will be going to, as I mentioned, take the roles of 5 different persons: the mayor, the head of employment, the head of self-service, head of finance, and head of environment. So please be proactive in your groups. And if you want to take a role, please let the facilitator know. That will make it easier and make the whole exercise go faster. And each group will be looking at this city located in a continental area with a humid temperature climate, nearby a river, and surrounded by woodlands. Between the forest and the city, there's extensive crop areas which provide work for 35% of the population. And the city has a total population of 500,000 inhabitants with a poverty rate of 10%. You will all start with an initial budget of 30 million and a resilience level of 3 that you will be seeing will change according to the decisions that you make. So this is kind of the place where we all start together. We will be dividing in 3 groups, and then we will see where we end up after 30 minutes, in which we will be going through, I think, almost 80 years of the city's progress. So I will open up the breakout rooms. We will have Helena on group 1 as a facilitator. I will go to group 2. And then Valeria will be on group 3. There will be nothing going on in the plenary room, so please go to a room. And if you don't have one, just wait for a few seconds and we will assign you to one. So we will be back here in 30 minutes after the exercise.
And will we be reporting back, Juanca?
Yes, just kind of like quick insights from each group, because I don't think we will have time. And I think we can just bring those insights and like reflections that you have to the final discussion at the end of the session.
So we need to appoint a rapporteur.
Yeah.
So please find one in each group.
Thank you, Eva. Okay, so I'll open the breakout rooms now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Hello, everyone, welcome back.
We are there.
So yeah, I'm not sure if all of the groups were able to go all the way to the end of 2100. But the idea of this exercise is to look at how kind of decisions and discussions are done within local governments, the different points of view that they are given, how to advocate for resilience. So I would like to hear from each group around these key questions of what factors affected the decisions in your group. In a real city, what other elements and stakeholders might affect those decisions and actions, and maybe you discuss some of those while making the decision. And lastly, what other tools, data, or processes could foster integral resilience-based decision making? So we were here playing with one very simple scenario, but what other information could help drive those decisions to something that is more sensitive to the impact of climate change, the long-term effects of the different increasing disasters and climate hazards. So just very briefly, 1 minute per group. I would like to invite you to reflect on this. Who can share from group 1?
I don't know who was which group, but
I can do that.
Major.
I can do that unless somebody else wants to. Yeah, okay. We chose in the end, after much discussion, we chose the more resilient one right at the beginning, and we're not tempted to go for the hotel. And I think that paid dividends because it meant that we had some strength in order to make the other decisions successfully as well. So we did end up with some budget left and resilience points of 6, and also, so some money and some resilience in hand, but not really enough to do some of the really big projects right at the very end. So I think the other thing I thought was quite useful is all the points made by the different experts, but they were tending to take a corporate view as well. So yes, they made the point on behalf of employment or health, but they were thinking also about the whole. And that's quite important if you've got a team running a town. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's great reflections. Let's go now to group number 2. I think Jacqueline, who was the mayor during the second stage, would be sharing.
Yeah, hello everyone. Jacqueline from Singapore. I'm actually the head of finance. Yeah, from our team and from the direction of the mayor, we decide to choose option C. However, we come out the analysis and result. We understand that to compare which options, not only for the finance, but how about the sustainability, the long-term plan, and also the education system for the country. So I think that the longest sustainability they will look into will be the infrastructure, which is we need the data to assess whether the consequences and also the industry expertise for engineering to build out the infrastructure, which is for long-term planning. So I think thank you everyone for the valuable information. It's really helpful for us to have a better understanding and the thought of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Yeah, I think what was mentioned earlier of like city level actionable data and science is very useful in regards to infrastructure. So let's go now briefly to group 3 before moving on with the session.
Hi, I am Anna from the Philippines. In deciding which option should be taken into consideration, on the third option, on the third scenario, we were not able actually to come up with what will be our option. But then, as a mayor and somebody from the group also decided the same thing as mine, so we take the option C. Why? Because one is we have no money, enough money, although we have that in mind, and our intention is to do something to mitigate or to address the concern, but resources is really a problem. And this is very true in the local government unit. So there's a tight budget, or let's say, for example, you want to do something, but then our budget is not enough and we still have other priorities. So that's one. in taking into the consideration. Another thing is that we also would like, as a mayor, we also would like to consider what are the inputs provided by the experts, because practically they are the voice of the people, and that's coming from the decision is coming from them, and so we really also need to consider. But in some other point, because of the resources, that's one really constraint us to do things. But if, let's say, for example, there's no hard and fast rules in the instruction, so we look for some option, like, let's say, for example, we need to have a public partnership, or some other financial institution will be helping for us, then that could be an option. Although there's no such thing in the instruction, but we need to circumvent the instruction or the law of that thing for us to deliver the services that expected of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel Marie. And yeah, I think this aspect of resources and the limitations is something that we will be looking at the last part of today's session, going beyond the budget of cities, which is always kind of allocated for the provision of essential services. So with this, I would close this exercise. I would hand it out to Eva. I think we'll have to have a very short break before moving on. Eva, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Juanca, and thanks to all the actors and actresses. Is brilliant. I think we have a future career there for having taken the different roles, and it's a very useful exercise to play someone's position. So very appreciated for this. So we'll have now a really 5 minutes break, because we need to jump onto the financial session, and some of the speakers would need to stay with us for a little time. So I would appreciate if you could really come back in 4 minutes. Okay, so thank you very much, and looking forward for the next session. Thank you very much, Juanca, and all the participants.
Thank you.
So, Lelaine, yeah, the session is going to reconvene now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's really great to see you here. And always, Future Realities is a game that always brings a lot of discussion. And it was also a nice break, interactive from all the information that we got from Kes this morning. Now, we're going to hear from two experts on climate finance. This is the moment for us to understand what is available for cities in the context of Europe and Central Asia, but this is something that can give a hint to other regions as well on how we can implement all of these plans, all of these resilience strategies, all of these climate action plans that we have. I'm gonna invite Constance Kahn, Sustainability and Quality Management Director from the European Investment Bank, to talk a little bit more about EU's Climate Bank, helping to implement the European Union's Green Deal and the Paris Agreement. Constance, welcome and thank you so much for joining. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elena, and nice to see you on screen, Eva. It's really my pleasure here to speak at this training academy on adaptation and mitigation. As you heard, I'm Constance Kahn, and I'm the director at the EIB's project directorate, so which is our home to our 250 sector specialists and engineers. We are responsible for EIB's climate and broader ESG and SDG leadership. We do the technical due diligence of projects. We have the sector knowledge in the house and do impact measurement of projects, just to give you a general idea. What I would like to do is to give you an overview of what we as the EIB do on climate finance, and then turn to our support for the cities. I have shared with the organizers several key documents, and I believe that Priscilla will already give you a snapshot overview of the activities in our cities document. As you may know, the European Investment Bank is the EU's climate bank. We are owned by the 27 EU member states, and we are a long-term lender. We are big. We delivered some 95 billion euros of financing last year. That's both the bank as well as the fund. And particularly last year, we made an additional effort to help ensure resilient recovery from COVID-19. We work across the globe, and while a lot of our activities are in the EU, we delivered some 8 billion euros of finance outside the EU. We have an operational plan that we always publish on our website, and we have basically 4 public policy goals. And you will be pleased to hear that since a year or so, we have actually put sustainable cities and regions as one of our key 4 public policy goals in our operational plan. The other ones are related to sustainable energy and natural resources. Innovation, digital and human capital, that's the 3rd one. And the 4th one is our support to SMEs and mid-cap finance. We also have 2 cross-cutting objectives for our financing, and that is, of course, climate as well as cohesion. So climate finance and sustainability more broadly has always been an area of critical importance to us. We pioneered the green bonds back in 2007, and also climate finance was actually the first one which got a target in our operational plan. We started very early on with carbon footprinting of the projects, and in 2019 we decided to stop financing unabated fossil fuels, the first multilateral development bank to do so. We took in 2020 further climate commitments. We decided that we will dedicate 50% or more of our financing to climate action and to environmental sustainability. by 2025, and we're already on track to deliver this. We also agreed to Paris align our whole lending portfolio, because it does make sense to do green good, with the 50% and then not look at what you're doing in the other part of your portfolio. And in order to become truly the EU's climate bank, we are rolling out our climate bank roadmap, and this really sets out our climate finance ambitions in detail, and, for example, gives you an overview of the activities that we will finance. We really take our climate task very seriously, both inside the EU as well as outside the EU, because we realize that we are climate-wise not on track. In 2021, greenhouse gas emissions actually went up. Also, the amount of fossil fuel subsidies last year has never been as high. And let me just, share some data with you from the 2021 report, the State of the Global Climate Report, which is being prepared by the World Meteorological Organization. That report talks about the exceptional heat waves that we are experiencing. California reached 54.4 Celsius in 2021, and Siracusa in Sicily reached 48.8. The report also states that flooding-induced economic losses, for example, in the Henan province of China, amounted to more than $17.7 billion. And in Western Europe, we also experienced some of the most severe floodings on record in mid-July. And there, the event was associated with some economic losses in Germany exceeding $20 billion. Another recent study by WMO shows that the chance of temporarily exceeding the 1.5 Celsius degree has risen really steadily. In 2015, it was close to zero. Then for the years between 2017 and 21, there was a 10% chance of exceedance. That probability has now increased to nearly 50% for the 2022-2026 period. So this study tells us, with a high level of scientific skill, that we are getting measurably close to temporarily reaching the lower target of the Paris Agreement on climate change. And that 1.5 figure is not some random statistic. It is rather an indicator of the point at which climate impacts will become increasingly harmful for people and indeed the entire planet. So we will not only have to accelerate climate mitigation financing, but we will also have to do more on adaptation. And that's why at COP26, we decided to launch an increased target for the EIB for adaptation finance, and namely to triple that to 15%. Not a mean task. Let me finish by saying a few words on our support to cities. We believe that the role of cities in achieving the SDGs and the climate goals under the EU Green Deal and the Paris Agreement could not be more crucial. And that's why we indeed lifted it last year to a specific public policy goal for us as the EIB. We support cities with both advisory services as well as financing. We have developed several programs for advisory support, and let me just mention a few ones. We have Elena for energy efficiency, Jaspers for preparing infrastructure projects. We have the InvestEU Advisory Hub with its urban investment support program, and we will share some documentation on this with you. While those may be more EU focused, we have also been working on advisory support for outside the EU. And let me just mention Felicity, the joint initiative that we undertook with the German government providing advisory services to cities in Brazil, Indonesia, China, and Mexico. We have also developed guides, such as the one on the circular economy, and we realize very much that cities play a very important role here. So that's why we have developed also a guide specifically focused on the role of cities. We have also been working, over the years to extend our financial products for cities, because we realized that often the investment loan, where we were looking, for very, large-scale investment projects, would not always work for the cities. So that's why we moved on with, for example, framework loans. We've also been working hard with the EU to see how we could combine, EU resources with the EIB financing. And finally, we have stepped up our partnering. I think also the previous session, what I heard from you is that actually partnering can sometimes, be a way forward to address some of the scarce resource, issues that cities have. And we were really very pleased to be involved in several joint initiatives. And I just want to mention the City Climate Finance Gap Fund. And I hope that Priscilla will maybe say, a little bit more on that in her presentation, because we believe that, this, partnering really offers cities not only support to improve the ability of projects, which is often a challenge, but also offers financing and support to crowd-in finance from other sources. So we as the EIB are really keen to further intensify our work together, as cities and regions will have a major role to play to deliver the European Green Deal and the Paris Agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Constance. Thanks for joining us. I know we're a bit delayed and you're short on time, but I just wanted to flag on our chat. People are commenting on what you are saying, and many people are asking for this report. But also, can you also further elaborate on how cities can access these resources? How cities can talk to the IDB? So where should they go? Who they should call to get support on that as well?
Well, one of the efforts that we have made over the last couple of years is to basically improve our presence on the ground. So while we are still very much, centralized in Luxembourg, we realized that it was important, to have, more feet on the ground. So we are steadily, building our local office network. So if you are based in a country where we indeed, have a local office, please do not hesitate to reach out, to our colleagues there. Of course, we serve a lot of countries. We are not yet, everywhere on the ground, but we also make sure that we have, regional hubs. So then, if we're not yet, on your territory, please, reach out to the office in the region. The other thing that we do is we have been involved in, local or national workshops. So also, if you feel that you will benefit from bringing, a number of players together, don't reach out, or don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we will be happy, to join for sharing, our knowledge and experience in more, targeted, focused workshops.
Thank you so much for the offer. We will be using that, and thanks for joining us. In the interest of time, I'm going to invite now Priscilla Negreiros. Priscilla manages the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, a global initiative with the CPI Global. And Priscilla will tell us a little bit more about the sources and opportunities for climate action funding in Europe. So I think that we have high hopes for Priscilla's presentation. The floor is yours, Priscilla. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear? Can you see my screen? Yes, right?
Yes, we can see.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I hope to fulfill your expectations and answer some of the questions from all of the many stakeholders that are here today. Let me kickstart because I know we don't have a lot of time. And what I plan to tell you is one, what we do. So who is Climate Policy Initiative and the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance. Jump quickly into urban climate finance in terms of numbers. We have published a report last year that tries to track how much finance is globally being invested. And I think these numbers help a lot on advocacy, and then go to the topic that we are interested about. So how I focus on EU cities, but it could apply to other ones, can have access to finance. So basically discuss a bit on project preparation, a bit on the taxonomies of financial instruments, and then have a brief overview of the EU funds available. So Climate Policy Initiatives and Advisory Analytical Organization, and we host the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, which was actually created in 2014 by the UN. And the idea was, okay, we have finally more interest on attracting finance at the city level from many different stakeholders. So we need, and a lot of people and organizations are doing the same work, not really coordinating. So the Alliance was created to help to do it, and actually to fill a bit the gap between what we call the demand and supply. So we have, the CPI has taken over in 2019, the Secretariat, and this is our membership. So we have around 75 different organizations, from city networks to public and private financial institutions, to what we call the enablers, including UNDRR, the EIB is also a member. And the idea is like how these organizations, all of them have interest or are directly working with cities and urban climate finance. How can they work better and do a better work? Then jumping into the second topic, and then talking about urban climate finance. So I'm not gonna go on the cities are key to achieve. I think for the past 2 days, you know how much adaptation and mitigation are important, and how cities are central on this. But I'll actually go to the third point, is actually the financial risk will increase, definitely. So on averages, losses, so just as an example, due to flooding, are around 60 billion annually, and they could increase around for 50 billion in coastal cities, for example. So what does it mean? It means that we have an urgency to act, and the perspectives nowadays of how much money we would need invested in cities is around $5 trillion per year. And we are very far from there, I'm gonna show you. And the scale and the speed required for urban investment, it's not at the pace that we need, for sure. This is like the what we call Sankey, but the big result from the State of Cities Climate Finance report. And what I wanted to show you here is that we have tracked globally how much money is invested into cities from several types of data. The total that we got on average for 2015 and 18 was 384 billion, which honestly, compared to the 5 trillion I mentioned, it's very far from what we need. We have tried to work granularly, so to try to understand sources, instruments, regions, also the climate uses, and definitely there is a lot of work to be done in that front. So just as an example, in terms of regions, you can see that most of the finance was mobilized in East Asia and Pacific region, but this was mainly driven by China. Yet, if we consider other regions, Eastern Europe is the region where we most capitalize on activities. And this is often related to transport and building sectors. And the last, we have a lot of different data. I can share the link also of this report, but just one last point on this is that I think you have discussed a lot of mitigation and adaptation, and now looking into the investment side of these two big areas, we can definitely see that there is a big gap between adaptation investment and mitigation investment. For what we could see from the State of Cities, only 9% of the 384 billion is invested into adaptation. Most of it is still on mitigation, and that's a big work that we need to do there, because we can see now, being in Europe myself, the heat waves and all of the disasters that are coming up, there's an actual very strong need to invest in adaptation compared to mitigation. And then my point is, okay, a lot of you say it's important. We know that we need finance. Priscilla, you're not telling us anything particularly new, but we don't have a lot of capacity to do much within our budgets. And then I think what we also have identified and reported that cities have many roles and many roles they can leverage and play. And conceptually, we could categorize this into the providers. So some cities actually can provide infrastructure and services and pay for this directly. But also cities can play as stewards, let's say, so they can influence through regulation, for urban planning, through convening. So cities have to include climate action within all of these areas to be able to make a change, and they have, even if not the entire power to mobilize finance, this also other areas can still mobilize. So going into what I think you're interested more about, so how can I have access to finance? I will start first on project preparation. So many cities face major challenges in identifying and developing financial viable, low carbon, climate resilience infrastructures, which are at the same time attractive to public, so the citizens, and to public and private financiers. And preparing well these projects, what we call having bankable projects, require high degrees of technical and financial engineering capacities. So I think there are some data from the World Bank that says that for the price of the project, so like how much the entire cost of a project, around 12 to 15% is only on project preparation, which was a big area. And then one thing is that there are many project preparation facilities. I think Constanza mentioned Elena, for example, from the IB is one, but there are many, like a lot of organizations from the CCFLA members, for example, have project preparation facilities that can help cities on different project stages. So concept, scoping, pre-feasibility, which is basically an assessment of basic parameters, feasibility studies for technical details and implementation. And the big challenge is actually identifying where they are. And what we tried to do within CCFLA is putting this organizations more in a directory available to the public to help you to identify what organizations could actually help you on project preparation. So if you go to our website, we have a project preparation resource directory where you can identify project preparation facilities. The idea is that you know this facility work on your region, and then you can get direct contact with them, but at least having the information is something useful. We have more than 30, and they work, of course, in different areas of the globe, and sometimes do work in different areas on project preparation, as I mentioned. For example, I can mention the GAP Fund. Initially, I had added the GAP Fund to my presentation, but I wasn't sure, as they work only with developing countries. So the GAP Fund is a very, very interesting project preparation that work in the initial phase of the project preparation. It's basically the concept, which for a lot of cities is very, very difficult. So it's a fund, joint fund from the EIB and the World Bank and GIZ, and they accept forms from like cities all over the world. And it's a very interesting project preparation that could help the city to actually put the project in place, and then potentially look for another project preparation facility that could help them on implementation. We also have worked with members. This is a bit less interesting for the cities themselves, but a big challenge is that there are more than 30, 40 project preparation facilities. Each of them have their own form, their own questions, and this is very burdensome for a lot of cities. So we worked on a harmonized form that a lot of the project preparation facilities that work with us have adopted, such as the GAP Fund, eClayTap, and among others. So this is one of the works. We have done a lot of work on project preparation, on information, basic information. What is bankability? What is project preparation? You can have all of this accessible in our website. Have done some deep dives also on Mexico, Indonesia, and I think it's very important also for you to be aware and prepared to get into this world if you haven't, probably yes. And we are trying to bring some information that can help you with this. Then a topic that I also wanted to bring you up quickly. We know that a lot of cities, and it was very interesting to see on the beginning of today's training that most of the people that are here actually fund their own They're on climate smart infrastructure activities through municipal owned resources and national government transfers, and some EU funding. And it's interesting that a lot of cities don't actually know the other possibilities and don't know what other cities are doing. So we are actually in the middle of the process to put it into our website, but we have built a taxonomy of all the existing financial instruments, bringing up some examples and case studies for other cities to understand what other ideas are up there. So, for example, on public funding, which I added as a orange circle, a lot of cities work with land value capture, which is when a city government pulls and assembly various privately owned land parcels in a given area and prepare the land use, including designating spaces for public infrastructure, and use this in their advantage. And this is quite an interesting and not a new solution, but a bit complex though, but could be an interesting pathway for cities that don't have their own funding, but have potential land that are interesting for private investors. We also have a lot of different models on the private side. And I know that some cities cannot actually have access to private funding, but they could use some of these models through other partners, maybe national development banks, so aggregation models, risk mitigation, and the most common equity debt. And sometimes even examples interesting on crowdfunding. I'm not going to be able to go into detail. We don't have enough time, but happy to answer any questions on those, and then invite you to join and then see more examples. And I'll finalize my presentation with like a bit of an overview of the EU fundings available. And I have to say, I don't work for the European Union, so I can't say it. It's very complex. I have already tried individually to have this. So this is basically what I put it together as an overview of what is available for cities. It's very difficult to find information. And I think, but a lot of cities in the European Union have access to EU funding. And a lot of them actually fund most of their projects with EU funding. So the funds are there. Some have access to information, others don't, but it's important to have this overview. And there's a lot of now interest from the European Union to make it more clear too. So if I could summarize, let's say there are three main areas of EU funding, like three main funds in the EU. The first one is the European Structural Investment Funds, which include 5 thematical sub-funds and are the largest sources of EU funding, not only for climate action, but for everything. If I have actually from the 5, there are 3 that do work with cities, the European Regional Development Fund, the European Social Fund, and the Cohesion Fund. All of these funds are accessed, most of the funds are accessed directly through national governments. So apart from exceptions within projects that are funded by ERDF, I can mention 2. Most of them, actually what happens is that the national government negotiates every 5 years with the EU. They have a plan. Some of them mention cities, some don't. And then this fund is actually, it goes through the national government. There are some exceptions, for example, the Urban Innovative Action, which is a program funded by the ERDF, and they provide direct resources to cities, so to test innovative solutions on urban challenges. There's another program that it's known Urban Act 3, so it's co-funded by the Cohesion Fund and EDRF, and it promotes city network, peer learning, and this is also something that cities can have direct access. But most of this column is basically national, directly from national governments. The European Commission also funds a lot of projects in the EU, although it has no direct responsibility at the local level. So I can mention a couple of the programs they have. LIFE is a big program that grants co-finance for public bodies, including cities, not only, but also, and private sector and NGOs. And the aim of LIFE is to promote environmental activities and climate action. So it has, since its launch, funded more than 530 projects at the city level. And this is like a program that could give a lot of opportunities for cities that are within the EU wanting to fund there. And then we have Horizon 2020. It's more a research program, but had fund programs in this area. And I'm not going to talk about the European Investment Bank because we had an amazing presentation. And I just want to say that the EIB is the Green Investment Bank from the EU. It was actually mandated by the new Green Deal to be the investment bank. So there's a lot of opportunities within the European Investment Bank, because as I has mentioned, the initiatives there are there. I think there is one challenge within the European Investment Bank, which they often work with larger cities because the funding that they give is around 30 million, but there's a lot of possibilities on aggregation and other models that could be used. And then, of course, we have a lot of challenges, political constraints, regulatory and budgetary constraints, capacity and constraints, and then highlighting again the knowledge gaps. And it's the difficulty in having access to this information makes it hard for some of you, for cities to get access. And I'm done.
This is a lot of information. We're going to share this presentation with all of the participants. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to invite you to stay because there are a lot of questions popping, but we will have a debate. We're running a bit late, so for those who are able to remain 10 minutes more, I think that it will be very interesting to hear from Paloma from UCLG Observatory on Local Finances. She will talk about local finance and governance challenges for climate change, and then we will have a little bit of a debate and Q&A. Thank you so much, Priscilla, and Paloma, the floor is yours. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Elena, and to all the co-organizers of this training academy, and hello to all the participants as well. So it's been really interesting to be here, to have listened to all the presentations, the keynote speakers, and the games. And I just wanted to, in the follow-up of the two previous presentations on local finance, some things will overlap a little bit, but I will try not to repeat myself. Just one introduction. So we know that the sustainable transition is urgent, but what we are lacking is not ideas from the cities. So we know that cities have projects lined up, have ideas, and want to make the change in their territories. However, we realize that what is missing are the means of implementation, and that we need to give cities the resources and especially the finance and the capacity to take action and focus on implementation and delivery of the SDGs and participate in the building resilience. So what I will be presenting today quickly is a city climate finance package that we developed at UCLG last October, and that we hope that all cities can use as a toolbox in their administrations. And this is, I will present it quickly right now, but you should receive it along with all the other presentations at the end of this event, this training. So basically, we have gathered in a list of 38 international opportunities to access climate financing. And it is, of course, not an exhaustive list. We hope that it will continue to be updated and widened as we hear from other opportunities that exist around the globe. Just to give you some context, I want to mention 3 of the main financing sources that cities depend on, and understand why these international and external financing sources are also very important. So the own source revenues are the most important source of revenues for LRG, for local and regional governments, mainly because it is what gives them the most autonomy to respond to the urgent matters, to be flexible in expenditure, and to manage their resources as they wish. However, own source revenues have still a large room for improvement, and new taxes can be created, and the existing taxes and user fees can also improve their revenue collection. Second source of revenue that is important for local and regional governments is, of course, the intergovernmental fiscal transfers, as we saw in the Mentimeter this morning, but also in the previous presentations. And what we need to improve on this point is that we need to advocate for more stable and predictable intergovernmental fiscal transfers that should also be formula-based for local and regional governments to be able to manage their budget correctly and without surprises. Final point on the different sources of finance is debt. So this has been mentioned. I just wanted to recall that it is not the most important or the basic sources of revenue are the first two I mentioned, but this one is crucial to carry out the ecological transition, because sustainable infrastructure and the investments we need to make the transformation have high upfront costs and are big investments that might need some debt and credit funding. So having mentioned these three components for LRG, for local and regional government finances, we know that finance is a crucial matter to implement climate adaptation and mitigation action. And considering this situation, we have seen a rise in financial, as Priscilla mentioned, the project preparation facilities and many financing channels by international organizations, multilateral development banks, and many other financial partners and development organizations across the world that aim to finance climate action. These are, however, not always accessible to cities, as we have seen, and it is not, and even those that are accessible to cities are not always, cities don't always, it's hard to have a clear picture of all these financing channels that exist, because they are spread across different organizations, and they all have different modalities of support. So this is why our intention with this list of finance opportunities was to give an overview of the main opportunities that cities can access. You will receive this document after the meeting, and the link will redirect you to a table with all the list of opportunities that I will share with you right now, just to give you an overview.
Thank you so much, Paloma.
Can you, wait, sorry, can you see it?
We can see your screen.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to show you quickly so that once you have it at hand, you will be able to navigate through it easily. So as you can see, we have all the lists of financing opportunities divided into 3 tabs. So some financing initiatives offer only monetary support, some are focused on technical assistance for project preparation, and some offer both kinds of support. So you will see that in each line, the different columns help you see the different information on the financing opportunity. I will go to these columns that are very important to look out for, because what we think is that each project fits and adapts to a certain modality of support, and that is important to verify what the project needs in terms of type of financing, type of support, and also to verify if the project and city is eligible for this type of finance. So for example, we have a column on geographical scope and target beneficiaries, where you can verify if this specific initiative fits with where the city is located. Also, whether it is some initiatives focus on secondary cities, intermediary cities, other in cities that are located in developing countries. So you really have to look out for the details, and that is why we made this mapping of international opportunities. I also wanted to note just this column, project size and investment range, which is very important because small and intermediary cities do not always have big projects to finance, even though they are very important. And here you can verify if the project investment range fits what the initiative is looking for.
Thank you so much, Paloma. We need to wrap up.
Okay, let me just conclude quickly then. So anyways, you will have access to this. And I just wanted to mention that yes, just one point I wanted to mention following the presentation on EU funding, that through a study we carried out last year together with PLATFORMA, we found also that it was very important for local governments to focus on the coordination with national governments. And as it was mentioned already, that access to EU funding is mainly done through national governments. And that is why aligning local government projects to national development plans is crucial to get access to EU funding. Feel free to contact us at UCLG for more information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paloma. This is really insiders tips and valuable resources that you're sharing with us. We have a few comments on our chat, people helping us reflect on everything that we're saying about climate resilience mobilization, call for equity into financial instruments, make the financial sector more responsible and resilient. So for me, it was really good to hear from Constance saying that the bank is aligned with the Paris Agreement. So it's shows that these global frameworks are guiding policy and climate finance, and we are getting some results. We're very sorry, but we're coming to the end of our session. But before that, I want to just invite Léonore Monconduit, Mayor of Poitiers, member also of United Cities of France and member of PLATFORMA, to give us a little bit of an overview of the second day of this training academy. Léonore?
Yeah, I'm here. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I am Léonore Monconduit. I am the mayor of Poitiers, which is an intermediary city in the west of France. I belong to these ex-future generations politicians are talking about since the first climate conference. And today in our countries, in our cities, we are managing this climate change we inherit of, and we support very often all the ecological policies that have been left behind. I am convinced that training is one of the key issues to tackle climate change. Therefore, I'm very happy with this high-level session yesterday and today. I thank CEMR, PLATFORMA, UCLG, and many others for organizing it. I feel that the level of awareness about climate change is very high, but the level of understanding of physical issues, of concrete consequences, and the level of training to develop skills to face both mitigation and adaptation still seems low. So during these 2 days, we have strengthened our comprehension of climate change issues. I particularly appreciated today concrete games, but we also go back to our cities, to our regions with new tools, with new opportunities for action, new opportunities for financing our actions. As a conclusion, I would like to say a few words about our role as local and regional governments. At a global scale, of course, we need strong decisions, especially during the COPs, which unfortunately, COP after COP are quite disappointing, if I may say. But we cities, local governments, we have higher responsibilities than what we think. First, as we understood during these 2 days, we are at the front line to reduce our impacts on the climate by developing non-polluting public transports, producing biofuels, upgrading the energy efficiency of our buildings, planting trees, protecting water resources. We paved the way for so many other territories, and we also paved the way for our countries. I'm convinced of it. But we are also, and more, at the front line to protect our citizens from climate-induced crisis and to adapt our cities. In the real world, when you have floods, heat waves, forest fires, and all the dark consequences of climate change, we are in charge. As politicians, our technicians, but we are in charge. Our communities come to us for real solutions. They need us to respond to climate change. I have represented the local governments during COP26, and as a representative of so many cities, I understood that managing climate change is an opportunity for us, local governments, to build a new international solidarity between territories. We are all vulnerable to climate change, but some regions, some cities are more vulnerable than others. So every occasion which allows us to strengthen our links, to share experience, to build a common expertise, is to be taken as an opportunity for us to tackle efficiently climate change and to protect our populations. So today and tomorrow, it's our duty to protect our populations from the impacts of climate change. We need support to do this, but local actions are really stronger than what we think, mainly about adaptation. And after such a training, I have no doubt that we have all the tools and all the help we needed to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Mokondwi. This is such an inspiration to hear from you about the role of local governments. Mayors don't have, cannot afford not to take action. So, and that's why we are working with cities. I'm just gonna hand over to Sarah from UCLG, one of our co-organizers. Thank you so much, everyone. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Helena and Eva, for all the partnership. So in name of all of us, I think this was one very, very important experience. We are all very, very happy with the outcomes, also on all the feedback we get from your side. I think also the closing words of Mayor Leonor couldn't be more inspiring. So I just want to highlight that, of course, we see from all what you have been giving to us that now we are in the need for action in the implementation phase. Helena said all the international agenda are aligned, there is finance, but still the action. So what is the action? What are the impacts? What are exactly the services? Where can we also measure and show our progress? This is probably the next step we have to prepare for. And of course, remind that in particular CEMR and UCLG, we are political organizations. So there will also be the political opportunity to emphasize on this more precision on the impacts, but also on the more tangible and concrete things like waste, transport. I think there were many things I mentioned. And we from learning, we can, of course, continue to support this part. We take it home also as a mandate to think more about this implementation phase. So how do we deal with impact indicators? And there's a lot of food for thought you have led us. So please don't abandon the learning community and keep connected in CEMR, in the MCR, because MCR, of course, is our big instrument to look into this, and also in the learning community where you will be informed on all what happens, and you can, of course, inform us and make us be better in order to give you better services. So thank you very much for all of you being patient and going with us through these 2 days.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
And as I put in the
Thank
chat,
you. Bye.
We'll be getting material and feedback within the next weeks. The time to put a little report together. Okay.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you.